Good morning and welcome to day two of the Minority Trailblazers in Sports Conference. I am Dr. Paula Jackson. I am the founder of this event, and I'm so excited that you have decided to join us here this morning. We are, as I said on yesterday, on the campus of Texas Southern University, and I want to give a great shout out and thank you to the HPE department as well as the Department of Athletics for welcoming us to campus for this two-day event. We're going to start today with a phenomenal panel. It's my esteemed colleagues behind me, and it's an all-women panel. We are continuing the celebration for National Black Women in Sports Day. So instead of making it a day, we're going to make it a whole weekend. So that's how we're going to start the conference today, changing the game in sports. And we're going to hear from these phenomenal Black women in sports today. So I will have a seat now and have them to introduce themselves to you and give you a brief bio. Thank you so much.
Dr. Hillard. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Janice Hillard. I'm President and CEO of Hillard Solutions. It's here in Houston, Texas, so I'm home today. It's an educational and sports consultancy where we help professionals help athletes succeed. Basically, we work with educational leaders, with sports leaders at all levels. Our company was started here in 2017, I think when I transitioned from the NBA. I was there 15 years in a player development role, had a great opportunity to work with athletes, team, and staff there. And prior to that, spent some years in college athletics at the University of North Carolina, at Chapel Hill, and the University of Houston, here down the street, where I played several years ago. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Dr. Jackson, for inviting me to be a part of this panel, and I'm excited to get the day going.
Good morning, all, and again, thank you to the organizers of the conference for having me here. My name is Dr. Joyce Olushola Ogunrinde, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Houston in the Department of in the role of Sport and Fitness Administration. My background, so I actually came from a family of athletes, and that started me on my journey to sports. Started as an athletic trainer and then transitioned to sport management. And I saw firsthand what it meant to be a woman, not only in sport, but then also a Black person in sport. So I'm very excited that we're here to talk about this today. My background, I actually started in collegiate sports and then transitioned to professional sports and then back to collegiate sports and now into academia, where my focus of my research is on women in sport and how we can use sport as a transformative tool for individuals and communities, particularly for redressing health outcomes in the African American community. So I'm very excited to be able to share some of that research with you all today and with the esteemed panel.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Nicole Person. I am currently the Associate Athletic Director and Senior Women Administrator at Coppin State University in Baltimore, Maryland. I am very honored to be sitting with this esteemed panel. My goodness, this is incredible. It is awesome when we get to meet face to face and share our experiences. My background started as an athletic trainer in undergrad and switched into administration. So I was in professional sports for about 20 years, assisting with special event logistics for the NBA All-Star Weekend. I also did other large specialty events. So I really have a niche for large scale event management, cutting my teeth on the 1996 Olympic Games when I was at Georgia State for my master's program. So I love being able to share those experiences. After the Olympic Games, I transitioned to the senior PGA golf, which was a unique experience at that time for Black women. I think it was Tiger Woods and myself that were in that particular space, but all of it has built and reinforced who I am today. And again, like I said, I'm happy to share. Thank you. That's good.
Awesome. And it just dawned on me because we were talking about the academic side on yesterday. So it just dawned on me that we have a panel of 4 doctors here. So kudos to you ladies. That is really awesome. And to give you, I guess I didn't tell like my entire background yesterday. I mean, obviously I started this event, but I presently serve as the Associate Director of Athletics for External Relations at Norfolk State University. Prior to that, I was at Hampton University as the Deputy Director and Chief of Staff and SWA for 9 years. I've been in the college world, but I've also been in professional sports as well. So that's something else. And I've known, well, I've just met you, Dr. Joyce, but I've known all of these women for years. And every time I do this event, I learn something new. Forgot about the PGA, just that whole, so we're gonna have some fun today. And my stint, I was with the Atlanta Falcons for 5 seasons in game day operations and PR. So yeah, let's get into this. Let's have some fun. So let's talk a little bit about strategies and how organizations can really help to promote women in sports, whether it's professional organization or college organizations, not only our student athletes, but us as administrators as well, making sure that people know what we do. A lot of times when organizations are looking for that next person to fill a role, they'll say, well, we couldn't find any qualified minorities. So we know that's not necessarily true. So how do we assist them in that identifying people for these roles? And we'll start with you, Dr. Janice.
Great, that's a great question. I know yesterday we had my colleague Stan Johnson on and talked a lot about just gender and hiring practices and those kinds of things. And I think that at all levels of sports, typically we tend to focus on the hiring aspect. And I know that Stan also talked about yesterday professional development, being prepared. But I think that visibility, in essence, as it relates to women in administrative roles, as well as athletes, I think the visibility is an important factor in how can we be more creative in terms of exposing women and girls in sports and first of all, to kind of debunk some of the myths that go along with females and female leaders in sports at all levels. So I think visibility is very important. That's done in a lot of different ways. I know Dr. Jackson, you've been in the media. We see more women in leadership positions in sports. I think that's the beginning to break down some of those stereotypes. And then networking. Of course, what we focus on in Hillard Solutions is networking. And how do we expand our networks beyond our networks, meaning outside with more male focus groups. I think we need more men who are advocates of women. Absolutely. And connecting into those organizations and foundations like the Women's Sports Foundation and others. So in essence, it's expanding visibility, also networking, obviously, that we hear a lot, and then mentoring. I'll say that last, we hear that a lot, but I think as women and women of color in particular, we continue to do that, and we need to continue to do that in order to create a pipeline. I think to where there are women coming forward who are not only capable and qualified, but people know who they are.
Yes, I think they gave a very comprehensive answer. I'm trying to add to that. I think to the recruitment aspect, if you want something different, you got to look in different places. And so I think really just highlighting the fact that where we see women shine are not always going to be in the traditional corporate spaces. A lot of the work, particularly for women, and even more so Black women, are in these community spaces. We're doing the groundwork events, right? And we're behind the scenes, and that's often the time, the places that don't get a lot of attention, but we know are very important to organizations. So I think we also need to, in our hiring criteria, really put a lot of emphasis and or importance on the fact that these roles that we find ourselves in because of the challenges we've had to get into the traditional networks are the spaces we cut our teeth in. And we're getting just as much, if not more, valuable experience behind the scenes, organizing and coordinating as those who may have the more glamorous roles. So I think we also have to think about it from a hiring perspective. What are the things that we really want from an individual? And then what is it where do we need to look to find those things? So not just looking at the names of places or the titles, but what are the skills that someone can actually bring to the table? Because you'll find that we've been doing this in and out of sport for a long time, and those skills are actually what makes us more valuable to organizations, because we can think outside of the box because of those experiences that we have. So that's what I would add to what Dr. Hillard just said.
Awesome. I began at Coppin in an academic setting, and I really enjoyed being able to interact each week with the students in my class. And I think for those of us that are in this position, sometimes we recognize a skill or a skill set before the student actually does, right? And so I make it a point to, when I recognize a skill set that I find valuable, or I think would be valuable, that they may not see themselves, that I point it out to them and explain how that particular skill set, even sometimes when it comes across as negative, right? You have some students that want to constantly challenge you. They constantly have that question. There's a place for that. And so I explain where that place is helpful, or I have students who thoroughly read the syllabus, right? There's a place for that, and then you have some who don't read it at all. So I think it's important, I have found it important to point out in my students their skill sets that they may not realize that they have, so that they can expand upon them. And then I invite them to come shadow me. I think the best way to see what it is that you do is to actually follow behind someone. And then they're always like, I had no idea that this is, they're playing the basketball game, but they had really no idea what it takes to put on the game, to produce it, and to make sure that it comes across as, the quality that they see. They just show up and play. They just show up and compete. And I always point out there's so much more that goes into it that you don't see. You do your role, but there's other people that do various roles. And I'm just so proud that someone saw in me, because I was not the star athlete. My career was going to end very quickly at a high school level, but someone saw that I was always keeping the team together, even though I wasn't designated as the captain. Administratively, does everybody have all their stuff? Does everybody have their backpack? Does everybody know what time we're supposed to meet? Right? So administratively, the coach reached out and said, okay, your real skill set is not, pass and shoot. It's keeping everyone together. It's in an administrative capacity, and I want you to be my right hand. And so I really appreciate her seeing the skills that I did have and pushing me in that direction. And that's what, allowed me to continue my career in loving sports. It wasn't that I was going to be an athlete. It was that I was going to work behind the scenes. And I'm forever grateful for her seeing that and pointing it out.
I think it's when you find that light, it goes out, it's like, oh yeah, this is it. And for me, it was in high school. Same. I mean, I ran, or I say track ran me. I was part of the team. I contributed to the point total.
Yeah.
But I was a cheerleader, and that's what I carried over to college. So not a traditional athlete, we are, but in the purest sense of the word. So I couldn't go to my coach and say, how do you help me get into this business? But in high school, I knew I wanted to work in sports. I didn't know exactly what or how it was going to get there, but I had such a passion for sports. I'm like, this is what I want to do. My initial thought was, I'm going to be the broadcaster. I'm going to be the sportscaster and put the microphone in your face and ask the questions and all of that. But then back to your point, as I was doing that, I started to ask the questions about, how did this come about? What happens before you roll out the balls or, set up the goals or whatever. So that's how my, interest in the business side of sports came about. And, it just went on from there. It's like, I got to figure out a way to get into this. This looks like where I need to be. So do you all think, because like you said, you came in through the academic side. I came in through compliance. So when you talk to a lot of women that are in the industry, they come in through those, what I call nurturing roles. It's rare that you'll see somebody come in and external. I'm fundraising only, or I'm doing marketing only. It's usually in more of those nurturing roles. What advice would you give? Obviously that's a way to get in, but I always tell people don't pigeonhole yourself. Figure out, get other experiences, shadow people, try and figure out, is this really your niche, or is there something else you want to do, especially if you want to move up? What advice would you give to other women in terms of getting into the business, finding that specific way to get in, and then carrying that on?
That's a great question. And I appreciate you asking that, because sitting on the panel here too with academics, I'm sort of an academic that has lived in a life in sports, who's an academic. So I've always felt like I've lived in two worlds, which has been interesting from a business and entrepreneur perspective. It's been a learning experience, because when you go through your education through that path of academia and being on the campus, that's a different environment. And so one of the things that happens, I started out in student athlete development, or academic support, that was called in the very beginning, which evolved into life skills, which evolved into student athlete development, which evolved into the things that we see today. So being in this business a long time, and I think it is very easy to get sort of pigeonholed in those helping what we call non-revenue producing units. However, the same thing is true at the professional level. Whether it's at the NBA, if you're in community relations, or you're in player development, you're not generating revenue for the business. And therein is the overlap as to why we advise at Hillard Solutions and our clients, and even folks in master's programs in sports management, is to not only develop the knowledge and the skill set and the experience, but really to find out what is your special sauce. So I see more women now who are interested in marketing, right? They're coming through sports management programs and encouraging them in that direction to build upon those skill sets. And I think the more that you know about what's happening in the industry, the better you are able to identify quicker your skill set, your passion, and to develop and move in that direction. So in short, you can move from the academic support and compliance positions in community relations into the other areas, but you want to be focused on doing that, because the higher level positions are going to require you to have a certain skill set in terms of business management, in terms of supervision, in terms of budgeting, and those kinds of things. So the more that you know about the industry and business, the more that you know what your skill set and interest and passion is, as you gain that experience, look for different experiences. And finally, more and more people now who are involved in academic support, student athlete development, are diversifying. They're getting involved in NIL, in development and fundraising, because they understand that in order to grow and elevate, you can grow and elevate in those positions. But if you want to be at a management supervisory level, assistant associate AD, you're going to need to gain those skill sets and experiences.
Yeah, I think what's important to note is that, we may be in positions that don't bring revenue, but that does not mean you don't bring value. And that's what you have to really speak to. What is the value that you bring to the organization? And so as a professor, that's the thing I tell my students: if you don't innovate, you're going to be automated. Because your role was not designed for you. Your role was designed for the organization. So for you, it's a platform for you to get the skills and the knowledge sets that you need to be not employed, but deployed to do something. So just to what Dr. Hillard said, you have to take that opportunity to learn the skills, get the knowledge. And I always like to say, I got this from, I'm dating myself, Denzel Washington in Devil in the Blue Dress. He said, if you're going to be mixed up with something, be mixed up at the top. That's right. So when you get in that organization, you get to know the CEO, how they got there, the CFO, the SWA, and you get in, and going back to what Dr. Person said, you shadow them, you ask them what they did, where do they go to school, who do they know, what conferences they're attending, what meetings can you sit in? Because what's going to happen is that role may evolve, as we've seen in sport, budget cuts, changes in legislation. So you can't guarantee you're always going to be XY person, but you can always guarantee you're going to be have XY skills and value. And so that's what we really try to harp on, is that, and going back to my earlier comment, we may find ourselves in these roles that are not as glamorous or revenue producing, but that doesn't mean you don't add value, and that's what you need to speak to. That's what I encourage students to speak to, and women in the space to speak to is what value have you brought, what changes have occurred because you were in this position, and what changes can you create if you were not employed but deployed, right, to another position. So we don't get pigeonholed by our titles. We really recognize that we are the resource, not the title. What we bring is what's important.
I love that thought process. We are this resource.
The other way that I pose that to my students is, what is your superpower? What is your niche? What is your superpower? What is your resource? And I learned quickly that mine was emotional intelligence. And that's actually what I did my doctoral studies and research in, was emotional intelligence and leadership. Because I found that I was able to, once I understood my role within the organization, when you're shadowing someone, you're not just shadowing their skill set, what you can read off paper, but you're absorbing how they interact in the space, right? How do they interact with other executives? How do they interact with students? How do they interact with the cleaning crew? How do they interact with the parking staff? How do they interact with the administrative assistants? All of that I was able to gather and use to my benefit. So regardless of the space that I was in, I was able to, interact with different people and make them feel comfortable, which then they would come back to me and say, can you help me with this, right? Because I felt comfortable in that particular space, even if I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to be doing in that space, right? Yesterday, one of the panelists mentioned you could be taught. Said you can be taught how to do things. What you need to learn is what goes along with having that particular skill, right? So the skill of being able to negotiate contracts is something you can learn in a classroom. But when you actually get on the other side of the table with someone, you kind of need to be able to read the room, read that person. That's a skill set that has to be nurtured and developed. And so I tell people, if you can learn to nurture and develop your emotional intelligence, it helps you. It's that superpower that you have when you walk into rooms that the person with just a straight book knowledge does not have. And it gives you that extra little bonus, right? And some people, I think that is a underrepresented value that we can take with us. So I look forward to sharing more of that experience with my students and colleagues.
Absolutely, very important skill set to have and constantly work on. I think that's one of the things that, as we go through a lot of these professional development initiatives, that's becoming more of a trend now. We're talking about and telling, because you can't really, it's not a textbook subject, it's almost like you have it or you don't. Emotional intelligence, I mean, people can tell you this is how you develop it, but you kind of have to have that, at least the foundation already. So let's talk a little bit about initiatives as I talk about professional development. Have you all seen some in your journeys that have worked for gender equity? And then on the flip side, what are some avenues that we haven't quite gone down yet that we need to do more work in those areas? But what has worked for you so far? I'll start with you this time. I'm sorry, Doctor.
And she's newly.
New.
Brand new.
Doctor, just what, a month
Man.
ago?
Thank you. So, okay, new initiatives that need to be instituted that I've seen. Well, it's easier to see the ones that don't work, right? The ones that work, you copied and replicated and moved around. But I'm a hands-on learner. I need you to show me and demonstrate to me. So a lot of times you want to, you have to figure out the way that each individual person learns. And sometimes when you're teaching, you have to say it show it, and then let them actually practice it. And I think some of the initiatives are one-sided, right? It's a come sit, listen to us. But I think the follow-up piece needs to be come with us and watch us, right? And then the follow-up piece needs to be, what did you gain from that experience? Instead of just sitting here absorbing, you can absorb it, but that doesn't mean you actually understand what it takes to do it, right? So sometimes the initiatives, I try to, the ones that I feel that did not work, did not reach the broad spectrum of the way people learn, right? It needs to incorporate more facets of how you learn. You know, you have some classes that you enjoy because you know they're interactive. Some classes you're just sitting there. You're just sitting there listening. So I think the initiatives, not so much gender specific, but just diverse in the manner in which they teach and expose. If that's a very broad answer to that particular question, but I think it's important because everyone doesn't learn the same way. And I think people miss the mark on, oh, that's not for me, I didn't get it. But it's because it wasn't presented in a manner in which you particularly learned subject matter. And so you may feel intimidated about the content, but if it was presented in another manner, you could easily, oh, that makes sense when you say it like that. So I think the initiatives and the presenters need to broaden their approach on how they present their content.
To expand on that, I think particularly when you talk about women and or Black people in sport, what we know is that, and I think this is true for everybody, but I think it's more salient with us, things have to have meaning, right? And I think to your point, sometimes the things that we learn have already been, the knowledge has been generated and disseminated and validated in spaces we were not in. So you're telling us almost a foreign language and asking us to now regurgitate it and do it. And it's not that we can't, because we have been, as evident by this panel, but when you're talking about making it meaningful and making it something that will be, so we can implement successfully, it's harder when it doesn't have meaning or value to us personally. So I think that to expand on Dr. Person's point, we have to make the knowledge that we give people meaningful to who they are and who they want to be in the sport. So I think the programs that have been successful, to your point, have seen us as individuals who can grow, as opposed to either just women or Black people or students or young professionals, right? See us as people who want to grow and look at us as an individual and how we are on path to that growth. I cannot answer this question without giving a shout out to the Black Women in Sport Foundation and Tina Sloan Green, Alpha Alexander, Nikki Frank, and I apologize, I know we don't have time to name everybody, but they were instrumental in my journey. And I'll just briefly say, so I came from a very traditional background, went to the University of Florida, worked in collegiate sports there, worked with football team, basketball team, so I saw things from a particular stance. I was a basketball player and I ran track. Similar to you, my coach saw that my talent was not on the court. That's how I got into athletic training. But I've always been on that side of sport. Like I wanted to be in a business and in a place where the limelight was. So then I got to Philadelphia for my master's, and I said, okay, well, because of who I am as a person, I love giving back to the community, and I got involved with youth sports, and that's how I got involved with the Black Women in Sport Foundation. So I still remember the first day I went to go volunteer. They gave me a fencing sword. I said, y'all want me to go in the inner city Philadelphia with a sword? I said, where's the basketball? She said, no, we don't do basketball, we don't do track, because we want our kids to see whatever they do, they can do well. So that was a mind shift for me. And just going back to your point that I had to look at these young people differently than what I thought, because I just thought, oh, Black people play basketball and we run track, so that's what I'm gonna teach you. No, I had to go in there thinking those are young people who can excel at whatever we give them the platform to excel at. So if I come in here with this fencing sword, this golf club, this lacrosse stick, and I tell them that you are an athlete or a person who has potential, they can do it, they're gonna learn it because I've already talked to who they are and not what I want them to be. So I think the programs that have been successful have taken that approach. And so really shout out to the grassroots work, again, that the Black Women's Sport Foundation has done. And that's a model of what we can do to be successful in reaching out to young people and encouraging them to be in sport.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yes. Wow, how can I add to that? Just phenomenal. I also teach in sport management graduate programs at Georgetown, at Boston College, and at Michigan State. And in our leadership and management courses at Georgetown, and in particular, the students that we have are, not necessarily athletes, but they play athletics in sports. And so, to tag on to the question previously, that some of the things that are taught in graduate school, in sport management programs, for those who haven't had that opportunity, prepare them for some of that skill set, leadership that we mentioned earlier that I wanted to add. So strategies and initiatives, gender equity and promoting it is a big topic and conversation that we've had in our society forever, since Title IX was passed down. Now we have an opportunity with NIL, if you will, to make sure that gender and equity is suitable and equivalent for female athletes. But, the IOC has started and really established a set of guidelines and objectives for the Olympics, right? As an initiative that started in 2020 to make the Olympics more gender equitable. So I think that is a major strategy from an international perspective with the Olympics, seeking to have equal numbers of male and female athletes. From a legal perspective, I think some of the initiatives, whether or not we want to resort to legal action, have really caused results. The U.S. Women's National Team, in their lawsuit, the WNBA, for example, in their collective bargaining and the kinds of things that they've been able to achieve. The FIFA World Cup, the kinds of things that are going on there, and even men's and women's skiing and skateboarding, right, have come up with initiatives, and objectives that have moved towards equal pay. Tennis, women's tennis, if you look at equal pay and Billie Jean King and all of those things over those years from a legal perspective. So, we hope that's not what we need to go to, but sometimes it is in terms of initiative. And I think also we see a trend towards women taking more control of their own content. I think that is an initiative that is working with social media now. You have athletes like Simone Biles, right, Naomi Osaka, and those women getting in front of the media and telling their own stories, right? And I think that's taking off and becoming, you will see more of that with college athletes. We see Coach Dawn Staley, who I love and everybody loves, and having exposure that she has, and doing television commercials with Mike Krzyzewski, right, and those kinds of things, I think help to promote to the public gender equity. Excuse me, and things, what can we do? Obviously, there's always a need to have more women in leadership positions in sports at all levels, but not only in those positions, but in decision-making positions. And there is a difference. Marketing, I think all female athletes would say at all levels, investing in marketing, working with media companies and providing that exposure. More male advocates, I mentioned earlier, I think is really, really important. And then ultimately, because I'm into professional development, leadership development for women, that focuses on not only particular skill sets and networking, but also helping them to identify ways as well to promote gender equity. A lot of success and progress has been made. It really has. You just have a long way to go.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we've got female ADs, at Power 5 institutions now, and it was like, yay, throwing confetti, this is a great moment. But then when you look around, it's like, where the rest? Big shout out to the MEAC conference with 5 female ADs. That's huge. So we see that, I'm sorry, female commissioner, correct. So we see that we're making strides, we're having an impact. But as you said, Dr. Janice, we just have so far to go. We celebrate and then say, okay, now it's back to reality because we still have work to do. You touched on equal pay, NIL. How do you think, because I know, obviously NIL is still very new. still trying to figure this whole thing out. It's like changing a tire on a moving car. But how do you think it's gonna impact women, female sports? When I first heard about it, honestly, that was one of my concerns. How we already don't have equity. So is this gonna, make the divide even bigger? Or will we have those opportunities, even if it's on a smaller scale? We may not get the, $1 million deals, but the women will be able to get something. Which way do you see that going?
Wow, let me jump on that one first, because I'm really excited about NIL, right? For a few years, it's been a conversation. And so, the emphasis so far has been on social media and branding and how many athletes can get out there and help sell product, right? And so that's the focus. So you have a lot of companies out there, and even athletic departments that are hiring folks to come in. I know Michigan recently and a couple of the other big time schools have brought in people to consult. And so as I follow this trend and see what people are doing, the conversation is about social media, selling product, and then the focus on again, the revenue producing sports, which is football and men's basketball. And interestingly enough, there's not a lot of conversation even about women's basketball, which is the number one popular sport. And so I'm always anxious to know what kinds of opportunities are women's programs, basketball in particular, being my sport, pursuing and taking advantage. And I think it comes to having the leadership in the athletic department saying what our NIL plan is, making sure that it's equitable to women. Because, and I do think that two of the top women athletes in college NIL producers are the Twins out in a certain part of the country. And so it'd be interesting to look at those models, Dr. Paula, to see how we can transition that. And not only women, but I think about the other Olympic sports, right, as well. Because I've always believed that this should be an opportunity for female athletes. And those colleges and universities, frankly, who have collaborated on campus with their colleges of business, right? I know at Michigan State, I'm a part of the NIL initiative there from an advisor perspective, the kinds of things, and it's the same at Georgetown. The more collaboration that takes place on the campus, I believe that also creates more opportunities for the female athletes because they're developing business skills, for example, and business plans that's going to last for them beyond college and the NFL, beyond college athletics. And so I think ultimately it is a great opportunity for Dr. Jackson. I think it's on the leadership to make sure of what we're doing and the opportunities that are there for female athletes because they are going to graduate. For the most part, female athletes graduate. They have interests. They're going to grad school. They're going to become lawyers. They're MBAs, and so they have a passion out there in some field, in some area, and we are not really kind of ramping up that focus on a different approach to NIL, and hopefully that will come.
Yeah, I'll start with my concern because the Twins came to mind when you mentioned that too. Because what I'm scared of is we're going to reproduce some of those inequities we already saw in sport in these NIL deals, and that's because we haven't learned to look at women differently, right? So when I think about the women athletes who have been able to capitalize financially the most from NIL are the ones who stereotypically look like what we want women to look like. And so what happens when you now have put money behind, even in sport, behind these images, what does that reproduce for women and girls specifically to say, hey, what does it now take to be a female athlete, right? Now do I now have to be aesthetically beautiful and athletically, perform. So it's, and it puts a lot of pressure on those of us who are not going to look like some of these ideal standards of beauty. That where's our space going to be, and so that's my kind of concern that we need to be careful that in these NIL, and we can't, there's so much we can control because we know this is bigger than sport, but just recognizing that how do we navigate this space that is still not necessarily made for us, but has been provided to us. And so that's why I really like the solutions that Dr. Hilliard provided because it's here. What are we going to do with it? And so I really like that strategy of teaching our young people to be entrepreneurs, right? And that we are not going to get the same, we may not, let me back up, get the same types of deals as those we see in football and men's basketball and even some of the female athletes that are getting a lot of the NIL deals. But what we do have can be valuable. We know our community. We're strong athletes and usually high performing in the classroom. So there's values that we have that companies want to associate with. Teach our young people to associate their value with work. That we often give it away for free. That's the other thing. So teach them that what you have and who you are is valuable. Create your LLC. Create your business strategies. And incorporate yourself now because that's the other thing. We don't trademark our own stuff. So we're always dependent on someone else to broker deals for us and manage our money. Teach them how to be those entrepreneurs now so they can take control of their brand. So just to add to what you said, Dr. Hilliard, I think the concern is that we're reproducing some of those inequities because of our societal values, but how do we take advantage of the opportunity is by understanding our worth as entrepreneurs and as business people in the space.
To be completely transparent, NIL can be daunting to add on top of everything else that goes into collegiate sport administration. It is, yeah. But what I thoroughly enjoy is that it allows the student athletes, particularly female student athletes in the non-revenue producing sports, to create their own content, to express themselves, to show the multifacetedness of the student athletes. Some of them have talents that I knew nothing about. They play music, they sing, they play chess. You only look at them as one dimensional. And when they have the opportunity to create their own content and share it, you learn they have all these other talents and skills that they're able to share. And oftentimes in the media, even in the sports information, within the collegiate department, they want to pigeonhole the stories, right? And I'm like, well, in the story, did you see the content on her page that she, has so much more to offer than just this particular sport? Investigate, dig into who she really is, and force these departments to share and the media to share a more rounded picture of these athletes. And I think that's the part that I have been encouraged about NIL. But the rest of it, it's a piece of work. So I'm gonna leave it there. So I always try to find the rainbow, the positive.
Right.
The positive, I love that I've been able to see, my student athletes in a different light. And so I try to take that and keep that. And then when I get frustrated with the rest of it, I'm like, but she is a phenomenal violinist.
That's great.
What are we gonna do with that?
Right, that's great advice, because I hadn't thought about that, so thank you for that. Because it is daunting, and the biggest concern to me is that it keeps changing.
Yeah.
It's very new, it's very fluid, and every time we think, okay, we got this together, we can roll it out, wait, there's new legislation, wait, they've changed this, it's like I said, trying to change a tire on a moving car. So thank you for your perspective. I will use that moving forward. Hopefully you all can use that as well, those of you who are working with or in that space. Thank you for that knowledge, Dr. Nicole. So let's talk about, because what you said about expanding who we see them as, that's a way of empowering. And I think a lot of times we need to do more of that with not only our female athletes, but those of us that work in the business, because we have barriers that we have to, battle against besides just doing our regular jobs. So how have you used empowerment to help yourself, to help your student athletes, to help your students? One of the things that we mentioned on a panel yesterday was, one of the new trends now self-care, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're pouring into ourselves, our cup is full, so we can pour into others. That's a part of empowerment. What are you saying, what do you do for yourself to keep yourself up and motivated? Because we do a lot, especially Black women, we carry a lot, not only in our jobs, but just in our day-to-day personal lives as well. And we wear this superwoman cape. There've been times for me when I've gone into my AD's office and said, look, I gotta take the cape off. I'm just tired right now, I need to take a break. But recognizing that and then being able to empower yourself so you can empower others. What are your strategies for doing that? Or do you have any? I think it's so new right now that we're just starting to recognize that, hey, sometimes I do need to unplug, and giving that advice to others as well.
I just had this conversation the other day with my cousin. We were trying to figure out what does self-care look like for you? And it's different for each individual. And again, you have to dig deep and understand who you are, right? We can preach the importance of it, but if you don't know what it looks like for you, you're going to do things that are not beneficial to you. If you don't, I enjoy traveling. I thoroughly enjoy live music. Live music transforms me, right? So last night, before coming to this panel, to sit here, which is can be an uncomfortable space for me, right? It's not new, but it challenges me in other ways to sit here and speak to you all. I enjoy sharing, but doing it in this particular manner can be unnerving sometimes. So I said, I need my live music. Best cousin, let's find some live music for you. We got into the space, they started singing, and I was just at peace, right? Now she went off somewhere else and did some, she's meeting and mingling people, but for me, just absorbing the live music, the band, it put me in a space where I can come in here today and I'm just like, because that's night, right? And it doesn't do it for everything. You have to find what is your thing, right? And use that, and recognizing who you are and what allows you to be most relaxed and most comfortable. And so I took a little video, and sometimes I'll have to look at that video. My other self-care is my Zumba. My entire staff, and probably those to the campus, knows that I take a Zumba class on Wednesday afternoons. No meetings with Dr. Person after 3:00 on Wednesday, because she is going to Zoom. And so they'll see me walking down the hall. Oh, it's Wednesday. Zumba today? Yes, ma'am. Going to my Zumba class. My Zumba was like my nightclub. You get in there, and sometimes after a really hard day, it's all I can do for two-step. And the professor knows. She's like, "You all right?" I'll be like, "I'm all right," and I'm just two-stepping. Right? That's all I can get out. Yeah. That's what Zumba and live music is, my self-care. And it's a place that allows me to, I tell in my emotional intelligence lectures to students, find out where that place is for you. And when you become uncomfortable or you become stressed, when I'm lecturing, if you ever see me doing a grapevine, it's a very slight move, but it's a Zumba move, it's a dance move. It means that I have gone to a happy place. It allows me to calm down. And what it looks like is just a step back step. But in my mind, I've gone to Zumba, I've calmed myself down, and I'm happy again. And it gives me a chance to recollect, refocus. So it's not always a big thing, but you need to find that place, your self-care, and learn how to bring it with you wherever you are, right? Learn how to conjure up that feeling even when you can't physically be there. And so for me, and they'll be like, "Dr. Person, you're dancing." Yeah, I'm in my happy place right now, So I think you gotta find your happy place and know how to carry it and conjure it wherever you are.
It's so funny. So like, this is my happy place. I like coming and giving and being able to talk with people, talk to people about my experience, their experiences. So it's, like to your point, everybody has something different. And I think it's different because where I'm in this space in life as a professor and a mom of young children, I'm used to watching Veggie Tales and Dora the Explorer. So anytime I can have some adult conversations, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in a good place. Which one?
Gracie?
Yes, Gracie's Corner. Dr.
Gracie is my
Sutton.
girl.
She is.
Yeah.
She's a good transition between adults and the
My
child.
child is grown, but I love Gracie.
But I really like something that you said, Dr. Nicole, about taking your self-care with you, and that for me is I need to play my music in my office. I want to be in a space where I feel comfortable and to do my work the way I want to. And I even let my students in my classroom. So a couple of things that I do, we create a hype list. So first day of class, I let them tell me what's the song that gets you where you need to be to do your work. And we create a class playlist, and when they have their focus time, I play that playlist, and my students will come up to me like, "Oh, you like Trailblazers?" I said, "No, baby, you put that on the paper. That's what you said you wanted to listen to." But you can see their mood change. That this is not a traditional academic adversarial competitive. You're thinking you're doing just homework. I said, "No, I want to see who you are in this assignment. So I want you to be in a space that allows you to do that." So that's one thing I've done in my classroom is create that playlist so that they know I want you to be comfortable in the space so you can provide your best work. We also have mental health days. And I said, look, you just did our midterm. This is a mental health day. Take a break. Don't do it. Now, however you choose to use it, that's on you. But for my class, I don't ask you to do anything. Even if you need to come to the classroom to keep your routine, I'm not going to be here. But if you just but you know that you have this space to relax. And so I think we have to your point, bring it with us and institutionalize that it's okay to take care of yourself first. Because you cannot be your best at school, at work, at home, if you are not your full and healthy self. So I think making it visible that I take care of myself and I want you to take care of yourself, and modeling that is important.
Wow, just amazing, and I appreciate that question because Dr. Paula spoke recently at our Women in Athlete Development Symposium and networking event back in April.
And thank you for that invitation.
It was just
awesome.
fantastic having you as our keynote speaker. And the first conversation that she and I had about her participating, we talked about 2 hours.
It was
And
3.
It was 3. We talked that long, and it was primarily about the question, that you just asked. And we have not talked with each other, seen each other since 2018, I think at NACDA up in DC. And we talked about, so I have 3 things to share. One is related to talking with other women, whether they be in academia, in sports, or whatever, on a regular basis. I try to reach out to the 4 or 5 women who are in business or in the academy at least quarterly. We say we're going to do that and we get so busy, but I really make a point to reach out to them and have a conversation like the one that we had, Dr. Johnson, even if it's only quarterly, because that gives each of us, confidence. It gives us a place to talk and to vet to other people who know and understand our experience. The other is self-assessment. Was mentioned earlier. I think that's very important. Again, it's something we teach our coaching clients. If you're constantly assessing yourself, seeing where you are, who you are, you have to take that upon yourself and do it yourself and be who you are and be comfortable with who you are. There's so much going on in social media today, in the world, and expectations, and all of that, but you really have to take that responsibility to do it yourself. The second is, around recognizing other women. And our symposium, again, was about recognizing women who had not only contributed to the symposium over 5 years, but it was really about recognizing them in their success. And I think that's something that we can do more in promoting each other. Monique Johnson does this very well. You guys know in her significance in athletics and sports magazine, feature that she has coming up featuring Renee Miles. She featured our conference. She does this phenomenally, where she's a marketeer, as you are. Dr. Jackson, but recognizing and promoting other women so that students in graduate school and just everywhere get to see us and recognize. There's very few opportunities really that happen for recognition for women in sports, and women in sports in particular in color. And then finally, by faith, which is the most important thing, and taking out spiritual time and space. I've done that more in the last year or so, deliberately realizing that every day I'm so busy, I have so many things that I want to accomplish. But then once I started doing it, I found it easy, for an hour, another hour to go into whether it's devotion or whether it's prayer or whatever. Everybody has to find their own thing. So for me, my faith is the most important thing in my life, besides anything else forever.
Just that little interaction right there. I'm taking mental notes on things that I want to do. And Dr. Janice and I, to go back to that conversation, it was supposed to be like a prep call for, her conference where I was speaking. And I told her, I said, you have been, I have done professional development. I have gone to church. I've had a mental health counseling session. We need to do this more often because she covered everything. And I told my sister, which is how I met Dr. Janice, I said, I talked to Janice today for 3 hours. She said, today? I said, yes. And it was so good. I feel so lifted. I felt rejuvenated. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. We can do whatever right now. It's those kind of conversations, because we experience so much of the same things, that we need to make sure, like you said, we need to make sure we continuously have those conversations. I talk a lot about my circle, my sister circle, and, 9 times, and sometimes I feel guilty because I don't want to bother you because we're all so busy. It's like I feel bad, but I need to talk to y'all. So instead of picking up the phone and maybe a text, I'm checking on you, just letting you know I'm kind of dealing with something, so just say a prayer for me, or we'll catch up this weekend or something. But those little interactions really mean a lot and make a difference. I want to be intentional about doing that more. So even if I have to set a reminder, put it on my calendar to call my girls and just check in. Because a lot of times that little check-in, you don't know what people are going through. That one little check-in can make so much of a difference. I appreciate each of you, even though I have just met you, you're now in my circle. That's Joyce. But what else, any words of wisdom, for women or just, people of color in general? And I always concentrate on, like people say, well, you created this conference, it's Minority Trailblazers, because our stories are different, because our journey is different. And the things that we go through to get to the spaces that we're in right now, they're different. So that's why I concentrate on us more. And you're absolutely right, we need to concentrate on women of color, specifically Black women as well. But are there any words of wisdom that you would like to impart? The camera is yours.
Well, I may have seen this or read this somewhere else before, but I really latched on to it. And the message I would give is you are enough. Okay, you are enough. And maybe I got that from Anisha Curry. He was one of our keynote speakers a couple of years ago. And that means our experience and my experience has always been climb the ladder, do more, get the best education, work hard, keep your head down all the way throughout that journey that I've been there. Okay. And in the end, what happens is all of the other factors that influence your experience, particularly in sports, again, that were talked about yesterday, those attributes, those other experiences are equally important. So you still have to be the best at what you do. First and foremost, you still have to do that. That aside, understand that you are a human person, right? And you have life and experiences in front of you, but know that you are enough. You can spend your entire career trying to move up or trying to be the best at who you are, and you are enough. And so take pleasure and confidence in knowing your value and enjoying and celebrating life and your experience.
I would say find your tribe. To your point, Dr. Jackson, knowing people who know who you are and know what you're worth and will remind you of that when, especially when you're in spaces that will tell you otherwise is important. So I want to shout out my Sister Docs. It's an organization that me and Dr. Carter Francine, Dr. Jacqueline McDowell, the newly tenured Dr. Michelle Richardson at Coppin State, and Dr. Courtney Flowers, who's here at CSU, have created to create that space that we needed, we didn't have when we were going through our PhD journeys, and realized we wanted to institutionalize so that more people had a tribe that could go to and remind them of these things, and also give them our the things that we've learned through academia and our professional experiences. And so I am grateful for that organization from a professional standpoint, because it provides that professional development that Dr. Hillard and Dr. Persons talked about, but they also remind me who I am as a person when I'm like, girl, these evaluations that came in, this paper, they want me to revise and resubmit it and add this and that. So it's very important to find those people that will hold you accountable when you want to give up, because you will, because of the things that we have to face. But then also remind you of your worth. And then also, that's your happy place, remind you that you're still a person that needs to be filled, as well as to someone who's going to be fulfilling things. So
Deep up here. It's deep up here. Mine is not as profound, and I think when you come into my office, on my bulletin board, there is simply a Q-tip wrapped with a purple ribbon around it. So purple is a happy place for me. That's why I wear it. It's little things, but I like to be transparent so you understand why I'm head to toe in purple. If I feel as though I'm going to be uncomfortable, then I douse myself in things that make me comfortable, right? So my sneakers are purple, my whole outfit is purple, my lips are purple, everything is going to be purple, right? But the Q-tip is tapped to my board, and Q-tip stands for quit taking it personal. A lot of people come into my office and they want to vent about something, and I said, you take it this personal. And let's reevaluate. Is this your perspective, or is this a fact? And a lot of times, things that you encounter, you've internalized with all of your baggage and all of your experience, and you've made it a personal situation when it's not, right? And sometimes that stuff I've noticed with my student athletes or with my I call them executives, they think that someone has done something to them intentionally on purpose. Most of the time they have not. So my word of wisdom that I keep before me at all times is just my little Q-tip, and it's quit taking it personal. That's what I have to share.
I love that. You can find some Q-tips.
Yeah. I give them out as gifts, and I tie a little ribbon around there, and sometimes you need a visual reminder. Is this personal? I don't think it's personal. It may be. Most of the time it is not, because everybody's coming from their own perspective. They're not doing it intentionally to make you upset. They're just coming from a place of, we see it as selfish. We all get kind of selfish at times. We need what we need, we want what we want, but it's not a reflection on their doing something intentionally to you. It's just, that's the space they're in right now. And so, my thing is, it's not personal.
Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Yes, just want to say phenomenal you are, Black women.
Thank you.
I am so excited to listen to all of the things you all have to say, and Dr. Hillard, the sword. I like that, because a lot of times in my class, I ask students, I give you 30 seconds to name as many sports as you possibly can in 30 seconds that does not end in DALL. And you'll be amazed at they can't make it to 5 in 30 seconds, because a lot of students just think everything starts and ends with BALL. And so that's an analogy you might want to try with some people, and some of your students in the future sometime. I really enjoyed all these things. You guys gave us some great information. I'm definitely going to use the Q-tip this mine now. I like the circle of friends. I like some of the things you say and finding your space. It seemed like there was a slogan that's been honed in this conversation this morning about finding your space and your place, and you have to navigate your location. So I'm going to enjoy that. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I do have a question. What would be your advice to a woman, particularly a Black woman, who is pivoting her career now into a more professional side of sports? And I say that personally because I'm an educator, not coach, but I want to now start transitioning to a more professional aspect of it. What would be some advice to kind of like, I guess, motivate and encourage, especially because I have not had the experience of being in a professional sports arena yet, as of yet. And so like, what tidbits that you would give to someone in that nature?
Great, this is what we talk about all the time at Hillard Solutions. Because for one, I've always believed that coaches have just an immeasurable skill set and experience. You know, and all coaches want to be head coaches, but the best coaches in the world are the assistants. Because they know everything and they do everything, and yet there's limited number of jobs. And so the friends that I have, Fred Apples of the world, people who have been assistant coaches are always talking about thinking about what do they do next, how do they get to the next level. A couple of things I would say is one, just begin to sharpen and increase your skill set. The skill set and experience of those who are sports leaders in professional sports, which is understanding, studying folks who are in those leadership positions. And so what skill sets might you want to improve and increase? If it's management, if it's leadership, if it's budgeting, I think it's really important to have that skill set. And being in sports already, and as a coach, you already have those. And so how do you then second, learn about the industry? You know, I talk with a lot of people that want to just move seamlessly between college athletics and professional sports, and it's a completely different world. It's a difficult thing to explain. The politics that are involved in professional sports, the networking that's involved in professional sports. And so you do have to have a network in that space. And so how do you use the tools that you have and the networks that you have to create a network in professional sports or in college athletics? Because it's a different thing. So having the skill, then creating that network. And then secondly, and thirdly, you know, I encourage people to find out what's going on in the industry. What is the next big thing? Okay, and then how can you put yourself in situations and environments where you are exposed to that arena, whether it's All-Star or WNBA All-Star that I'm headed to next week. I finally get to be a fan. I finally get to run around next week. I can't wait. And like,
Yeah,
just
I
take
actually
take
changed my
pictures.
conference date so she can be here. You know, so I got to go to All-Star. I'm like, wait a minute, let me see.
So I cannot wait to get there because I mean, I want my photos, you know, something you never could do in
Right.
the NBA, right?
Yeah.
But being in that environment, whether there are events and getting exposure to what happens in that arena, are the things that I think that one can do and that you can do now, right? So when you make the transition, it's like our athletes. You have the experience. You have some of the skill sets. You need to create a new network. You need to understand the business of sports at the professional level. And then where are your opportunities by making yourself present at events where you get to know people, they get to know who you are. Hope that helps.
I'm recording now.
We'll charge you for that. We'll charge you for that complimentary coaching session. Thank you for your question.
I would just add, I think as educators, we're probably the most skilled people on this planet. So what I find, I'm grateful for my background in education, particularly K through 12, because it actually helped me identify some of these adult behaviors. So they look to the person, I say, you're just having an adult temperature right now. You're taking it personally. So I think what we need to do is just have a timeout. Sometimes we just need to listen. So, you know, I think what it is we have to realize we have transferable skills. They call it something different in corporate America than they do in education. And that's what I realized. So just think about what you've done. I mean, what you're doing with a team. You're doing project management. You're doing volunteer coordination, event management, fundraising, that all, we call it something different, but it's the same type of skill, right? We just have to now think about how it looks like in this environment. So I would say even starting with your resume, look at where you want to be, what are they looking for, and how does that already, the skill you already have translate to that. So you may have to call it something different, but it's the same. The big key is act like the little kid. They just have more tools,
Yes.
resources. But what I've learned from being in education is the same types of, you're still dealing with people. And so I think it's important for you to recognize, you bringing something that a lot of them don't have because they had a corporate background. You need to come in with the education and now the corporate knowledge that's gonna put you in a place, it's like Dr. Person, to have that emotional intelligence, how to deal with people and be professional. So, highlight that. Because now, if you, I mean, like Dr. Williams, she gets to be a consultant because she understands people and the profession. So realize you're coming in with that niche as well. And, look for those opportunities that, particularly here in Houston, there's so many grassroots organizations that will let you come in and plan and organize and go with the CEO to meetings and use those opportunities to get your foot in the ground, your foot in the game and start actually like being innovative. Because oftentimes students want to go, they ask us, how can I get an MBA in the MLB? And I said, you can go there, but you're gonna be picking up cones.
Right.
Directing, taking tickets. If that's what you want to do, just to be there, that's fine. But if you actually want to learn some skills, the Special Olympics, the Black Women's Sport Foundation, your college athletics, those are great opportunities where people are more hands-on and more within reach for you to be able to get the skills that's gonna really transform your knowledge of the field and your ability to be an impact, to the industry. So that's what I suggest.
I was mentioning this to someone the other day that HBCUs are a great place to, we're gonna let you see everything. You want to help with this today and this tomorrow and this, you in a course of a week, just because we're such limited resources as far as finances and people, that if you want to come volunteer to do game day, management, or you want to help out one day with fundraising ideas, most of them will allow you that opportunity just because they welcome the additional hands, the hands-on. Whereas sometimes I see colleagues at larger institutions, they're pigeonholed.
Yes.
They're only allowed to touch so much, right? So I would say just broaden your experience, and two, find someone who will honestly tell you your strengths and weaknesses. Someone who is not afraid to have that very, very candid conversation, and they don't have to be in the industry. Someone who knows you, right? And then what you do is you take their information and you take those, she said, my strength was this. What does that mean in this particular industry, right? My weakness was this. How do I undergird? How do I build myself up in that area because it looks like this in this particular industry? So I have again that cousin. I brought her with me. She has no interest in sports. She loves that I'm in sports and she loves me, and she will honestly tell me, that's not it, sister. You need to do something else, right? And I value her judgment because one, she knows me and she has my best interests at heart. Even though she doesn't understand my industry and my job, she understands me and will tell me areas that I have strengths and weaknesses. One, you have to ask, right? Sometimes we're afraid to ask. We don't want to ask what our weaknesses are because we don't really want to hear what they have to say, right? We like people to tell us, you're doing a great job. Thank you, I appreciate that compliment. But in the same token, you have to be willing to accept when someone that you respect points out your weaknesses and take that information and see what you can do with it as well. Not, in that instance, it's personal. They know you personally and they want the best for you. And so when they present this information to you, it's not in a place to bring you down. It's in a place so that you can correct, adjust, so that you can move on.
Constructive.
And can I add two things, one on this topic and one to a previous topic? I want to shout out Jackie Hamilton, who's also part of Sister Dogs at PV. So I forgot her earlier, so please forgive me. But also to this point, create a strategic plan for yourself. So one of the other things that we miss out on are those opportunities, because most of these things, like these conferences, they're planned in advance. So you gotta register in advance, and you gotta, be prepared in advance, financially, personally, however. So now we know this is gonna be happening every year. Okay, you put it on your calendar. How do I need to prepare for this place next year? So just create a plan for yourself. Like, okay, these are the opportunities I want. What do I need to get there? Because a lot of times we find out. Unfortunately, we find out about some of these things last minute. But then sometimes we do find out about these things, but we don't plan for how we're going to achieve or attend. Those opportunities. So just, as you're finding these opportunities, put it on your calendar. Okay, I know February this is gonna happen. September this is coming up, so that you're ready for it. Whether it's getting your resume together, sending feelers out. I know before getting in professional sports, the process at that time, you have to send your resume out almost 3 months in advance before the career fair. So if you're not ready 3 months in advance, it don't matter if you got your plane ticket in April, right? You have to have those things ready to go. But thankfully I had a mentor who told me that. Otherwise I'd have just gone up there and been like, hey, what's going on? So really just make sure you have a strategic plan for yourself. What are the things you want to accomplish in this quarter, in this year, and what do I need to do now to get there?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. One more question.
So to go along with her question, I'm actually the opposite. I've been on the corporate side at HBCU, and so I ended up helping in the athletics department for a game, and now I've grown a passion for it. And so coming from corporate to athletics, what different type of organizations would you say I need to look and be a part of to increase my portfolio as I change my career?
So Dee from the NCAA yesterday mentioned NACDA. NACDA, National Association of Collegiate Athletic Directors, is a tremendous event. And the point she made that I zoned in on was it's a networking event. A lot of the times you attend these conferences and they're all teaching about the same thing, right? But the real gem of NACDA is it brings so many people together from all different facets and levels. HBCUs look nothing like when you have the Power Fives walk into NACDA. They all up there, their gear on. They, from the equipment manager all the way up to the AD, they're all dressed and marching in, right? And we're just kind of like, do we all have matching shirts? No, we don't. But everybody's there, everybody's mingling, everybody's talking. The other point she said was that I'm definitely gonna take into perspective is go outside of your industry for professional development, right? So we think we only have to attend NACDA, but I really want to attend Walt Disney. I value their customer service experience. I value their logistical experience. I value the way they present themselves in a business model, right? So they offer professional development. And so it's like, you don't always have to stay within your industry because corporate America, as you know, is very different than collegiate athletics. So I would say now it's time to attend these sports-based conferences so you can understand. Because a lot of times we're explaining to institutional advancement or our fundraiser bill. We're like, who does that? Yeah, who does that?
Yeah, and that's the department that I'm in, is institutional advancement.
Yeah.
So I can see both sides, and now that I'm helping with fundraising for athletics on top of helping at the games, it's like coming together.
Right.
But I'm like, I really like athletics.
Yeah. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
We're our IA partners.
I think women, just to add to NACDA, it's great. There's women leaders in college sports, which I know Dr. Jackson has not an executive role, but a part of that. There are not that many leadership organizations, unfortunately, in college sports, women leaders in NACDA. But I would just add to what the doctor just added is then get in front of some of these conferences and present.
Yes.
Okay, get in front of people outside of your conference and your school so that they can see who you are, what you do, because that corporate advantage and experience is much needed in athletics. So identify your opportunities to increase your exposure.
Absolutely. I'm gonna say that for the classroom, we need you to come talk to the kids. And it's a great way for you, one, it's great exposure for our young people, but it's a great way to get a pulse on what does it look like to be on the academic or the educational side? What do the students look like? What are they thinking about? What are they desiring? So I think that, transitioning to this side will also, being in the classroom will help you get a pulse for the people and even the faculty too. What does it mean to be in education? What are the things that we're facing, the things that we need, and how we can add value?
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, well, I think we didn't cover everything. We really could sit here until this time tomorrow and not cover everything. But this was a great way to start the day. This was a great extension of National Black Women in Sports Day. So as I said, we're just gonna take the whole weekend to celebrate us. But I want you all to really look at this panel. 4 African-American women, 4 PhDs, all working in the business of sports. This is how we start our day. I thank you all for being here. I celebrate each of you and everything that you are doing. And I hope you all will help me celebrate them as well. Thank you.